Hey everyone, welcome to Biblio.com, used and rare book marketplace featuring over 100 million used, rare, and out-of-print books. In celebration of our Biblio.live virtual book fair, we will be doing a series featuring some book collectors and their collections. Today, we're chatting with Jamie Mastrogiacomo. Jamie is an English and American Studies student at Smith College with a concentration in rare book studies. Just found out she's graduating on Sunday. Congratulations to Jamie. She is passionate about researching and preserving archival materials, and she enjoys studying the history of American literature and pop culture. She was an honorable mention in the Honey and Wax 2020 Book Collecting Prize and has been featured in Fine Book Magazine's Bright Young Collector series. Jamie is most known for her collection of books and ephemera based on the Beatles' life and rise to fame. Jamie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, we'll launch into a few questions about the Beatles. We're all excited to chat about this today. Based on previous interviews, you were introduced to the Beatles from a pretty young age. Did you listen to the band growing up?
I did, yeah. My dad would play their records a lot for me and my sister when we were younger. I just really formed a connection with the music because of him and because of the memories I had of listening to it with my family. And it just continued through middle school. I got really interested in the Beatles solo work, which helped me understand their lives a lot better. Yeah, I've listened to them ever since.
That's awesome. So you listen to them regularly and you've got this collection. Tell us how you were first inspired to start the collection.
Honestly, it kind of happened accidentally. I I just found over the years I would have people give me things. So a lot of my collecting when I was probably 12 or 13, it wasn't me going out to antique stores and book fairs like I would now. It was my parents giving me a book for Christmas or my 8th grade music teacher giving me my first copy of the Beatles anthology, which blew my mind at the time. It started off with a lot of help from the people around me who kind of encouraged that passion as I grew up. And now it's a little bit of everything. I just find things that I like, or I have people send me things that they like or that they don't want anymore. A lot of older relatives trying to get rid of things, which is very beneficial for me.
Thoughtful. So let's launch into this question about the original fans. I'd love to learn more about your thoughts and how you came to really focus on them as part of your collection.
Yeah, so when I was around 12 or 13, when I first started collecting, I was a big part of the Beatles fan base on the website Tumblr. And it was a huge community of people that would make a lot of creative things. A lot of people would dress up, recreate the Beatles outfits, cover their music. It was just such a diverse and creative community. And I remember being a young female fan and feeling like a lot of times older people, in some cases older men, would look down on female fans and say, oh, like, I bet you can't name 5 songs, or why are you wearing that t-shirt? I bet you don't even know the name of one of their albums. And I thought that was so weird because their original fans were teenage girls. I really latched onto that discrepancy based on my own experience as like a teenage fangirl. And I found that most of the books I read about the Beatles really emphasized the women that propelled them to stardom. Not only their female fans, but the women who were around them, their wives and girlfriends and photographers and people that really helped boost their careers. And so I got really interested in those women because they are talked about, but I feel like the cultural perception has shifted somehow where young women are seen as silly for liking boy bands nowadays. And I just think it's always been a
I mean, young women are the main audience for these boy bands, which is kind of like funny to think about. As a classic rock fan myself, I also find it asinine when you're walking around with a classic rock T-shirt or something, and you get the name 3 songs thing. You're like, excuse me, as almost like they only expect you to listen to pop music or top 40,
right,
which
right.
is
And
wild.
the Beatles were pop music. They were a pop group. And I think
Right.
I think that their legendary status, I think people have an aversion to pop as a genre that always, that's a whole other can of worms that
True. Yeah.
I think about.
Yeah. So what is the most surprising thing you've learned about the Beatles and their original fans in your collecting journey?
I think the most surprising thing for me is how complex they are as people, and how it's not always me loving them and praising them and thinking that they're wonderful people and artists. I've read a lot about their personal lives and how they weren't always the best people. I read a great memoir by Cynthia Lennon called John, and she was his first wife before he met Yoko Ono. And that really changed my perception of who John Lennon was. And it made me take a step back and think, okay, I'm not just idolizing these people. I'm really thinking about how fame changed them and how it really impacted their families, and how the women around them unfortunately would suffer from that fame as well. And so that was something that was a real learning curve for me, probably when I first read that book around 16 or 17. And so now I feel like I have a much more complex idea of who they were as a group and individually.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of depth and, moral ambiguity in all
Mhm.
humanity, you could say. So yeah, I'm sure that's fascinating about, learning who they are as people. Let's talk about your collection. How are you currently sourcing items for your collection?
Currently, I look a lot online at certain Etsy pages and thrift books. I love thrift books. I also frequent a lot of the bookstores downtown in Northampton, Massachusetts. I always love to shout out my favorite bookstore, Raven Used Books in Northampton. They're kind of a Smith staple if you go to school here. And so
Yeah.
I'm gonna be sad when I leave the area, because that has been really helpful. And I also just, when I'm on vacation with my family, if we go antiquing or go to record stores, I'm always looking for books or ephemera. I don't always limit myself to just books. I really like to find ephemera too, because that's a something that's really near and dear to my heart, is just little scraps of paper that people otherwise might have forgotten about.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's great that you can do it as a family. I mean, that, they're all kind of in on it. It sounds like they have been from the beginning. So let's do a little show and tell. Can you show us the most exciting discovery you've made at a virtual or in-person fair?
So this piece of paper right here to the left is a shirt tag that I found at a vintage store probably 5 years ago. I really love it because it is such a mark of dedication and fandom that whoever purchased the original shirt cared enough about the band to save this ephemeral object that most other people would consider trash. So I thought that was really cool that I have it in my hands now, and that it's lasted long enough, all of these years, to make its way to me. And I've actually been able to hunt down the shirt online that it is that it's advertising and it was attached to. And I thought about buying the shirt, but I almost care more about the tag, because it's such an interesting idea to me that I have something that a young dedicated collector also had all these years ago.
Yeah, and the fact that she took great care to preserve it, and that whoever, stumbled across it, or whenever she did decide to get rid of it, or, whatever happened, like other people saw this and, saw the importance and significance of it. And the fact that, it's ended its journey with you is so cool. Well, it stopped along the way, I guess you could say. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience on book collecting? If they want to follow you or learn more about your collection, where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. I guess one thing I would like to say about book collecting is, I think especially as a young collector, I don't think it's about how much skill you have in tracking things down, and I don't think it's about how much money you have. I think I've found, for me, collecting, it's helped by the connections that I've made with people in my life, where people will think of me when they see something and say, "Hey, I picked this up for you," or "Hey, I saw this." And so that's something that I really want to emphasize to any other young collector out there who maybe is feeling intimidated by the book collecting world, or feeling like they can't get into it because they don't have the access or the money. If you have that passion and that interest, then you can definitely go for it just by making connections with people around you. So that's something that I always like to emphasize, because that was
Well
really
said.
important for me. As for where to find me, I am on Twitter at jammastro, JAMMASTRO. And I don't post there often, but that's where I would share a lot of my findings and current doings.
Awesome. Jamie, thank you so much. And yeah, you guys know where to go. Biblio.com on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.